distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen.
Hotel family, my name is Brother Ray. Hey, Brother Ray. We'd like to welcome everyone to the BK Mackey History Club. We meet here every other Wednesday in honor of William Mackey Jr., the late great attorney Alton H. Maddox, Jamil Alameen, H. Rap Brown, may he rest in peace, El-Haj Malik Shabazz, Dr. Professor Amos Wilson, longtime member, may he rest in peace, Brother Assad, Minister Khalid, Gil Noble, Louis Ray Rivera, Dr. Venn, Dr. Clark, Ivan Van Sertima, Professor George Simmons, and all the historians who gave up fame and fortune to bring truth to people. Runoko Rashidi, we never want to forget these individuals. So for the people that's on the Zoom, give yourself a great big hand. And for the people that came out in this frigid weather with the situation and problems, please give yourself a great big hand for supporting the BK History Club. In honor of Leola Maddox, UAM for life, at Alton, Miss Leola Maddox had a relatively new and old car, and she came all the way from Teaneck, New Jersey, to the United African Movement. What you say, Lady B?
Every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday. UAM was every Wednesday, and it was a good time for the UAM. And she believed in, Lady, Miss Dean, we started, she believed in bringing information to the people. And she came every Wednesday, ate her dinner in the UAM.
That's right.
Because she always wanted to bring people together, and there's nothing like live lectures. But we have Zoom now, we're out of state. So in honor of the United African Movement for Life, and the great attorney at war, Alton Maddox, who made possible for a whole bunch of individuals who's running around, civil rights leaders. He made it possible for them to be where they are today, and they never mention his name. But here at the History Club, we will mention their name. So I have some books. We're going to bring the camera over to the Amos collection. And these are books from Sababu and African World Info Systems to help Amos Wilson. Sababu continue the work of Amos Wilson, and he's working on another blockbuster book. He's burning the midnight oil. We have Blueprint for Black Power. We also have Sababu's latest classic in honor of Amos, The Psychology of Self-Hatred and Self-Defeat toward a Reclamation of the African Mind, and we have to reclaim our mind, and it's going to be a long time coming. Another classic, Black on Black Violence, The Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation in Service of White Domination. And whether we know it or not, we are still controlled by white folks. We still continue the conflicts, and we are dominated by, so that book, The Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation in Service of White Domination. African-centered consciousness versus the New World Order, and you hear a lot of things about the New World Order, but nobody talks about reading Amos's classic, African Consciousness in the New World Order. We have a classic for children, Awakening the Natural Genius of Black Children, which is a whole nother war in itself. The falsification of African consciousness, issues of manhood in black and white. Louis Ray Rivera, classic Jazz in Jail, and S.K. Damian, The Distorted Truths and the Bastardization of African Cosmology. So we have these books to help survival continue the great work of Amos. And to keep his work alive, and I just talked to him, he is definitely working on a classic. I don't know what it is, but it is going to be an excellent book. So he's burning the midnight oil. Now I have some books that you can get, you could do your reading. And first we're going to start off in honor of Louis Ray Rivera. And when Professor Mackey left us too soon, and we came down here and we left 851 St. Mark's Avenue, and me, Brother Hassar, and Calvin was trying to continue the great work of Professor Mackey. Louis Ray used to come down and he would speak for hours. And me, Calvin, and a lot of the members, Brother Colvin, we would walk Louis Ray home, and he only lived on Jefferson Avenue. And we would walk him home, and he would talk for another hour and a half. And we'd be on the corner, and he'd just be ripping it up. But he left us too soon, and I never want to forget Louis Ray, and he knew my family and Marcy Project. So this book is dedicated to Louis Ray, and he even brought the Mackey's group onto WBAI at one time. So, you know, so I'm gonna name some books. Chancellor Williams, The Destruction of Black Civilization. And when you get this book is gonna tell us all the mistakes we made as African people in the land of the black. From the Arab slave trade to the massive armies that fought gallantly, to the invaders, the Portuguese, and the whole world waited when Africa, Akbulan was weak. And they came in and they took over. And those great dynasties, they didn't get it easy. They fought hard, armies. So if you read Chancellor Williams' book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, you will get a better concept on the mistakes we made, and we're still making the same mistakes today. Chancellor Williams. Also, in honor of Dr. Ben.
All right.
Dr. Clark.
All right.
Dr. Ben's classic, Black Man of the Nile and His Family. And Dr. Ben goes into, you got the Washington Monument where they stole obelisks. And he goes into the building of the pyramids and those great civilizations. He goes into the hieroglyphics. He goes into the statues and what was going on.
Who's that, Dr.
Ben.
So we have Dr. Ben's classic. Also, Africans or Americans, Black Identity and Political Activism in New York City, 1784 to 1861. And those were some hard times, but we were still rolling strong. So I want to thank the African Echoes family. In this book, Lisa M. Alexander, African or African American, African or American. 1786 to 1861. And you remember the draft riots, 1865, where they hung us from the lamp poles down on 42nd Street. Queen Nazinga, African warrior. And if a lot of sisters would read this book,
They might know their worth.
not only will they know their worth, we wouldn't be able to pull the wool over their eyes after they see the fierce warriorness of Queen Nazinga. And when she went and sat down and negotiated with the Portuguese, they didn't even have a chair or a bench for her to sit on. And the brothers made a bench and she sat on them as the bench, and she negotiated fierce. So Queen Nazinga will go down in history. Also, African slavery in Latin America and the Caribbean. Slavery did not just happen in the United States. We were taken on the European slave trade, not the transatlantic slave trade. They say the European slave, no. The European slave trade, not the transatlantic slave trade. That trip across the Atlantic was done by Europeans. It's the European slave trade. And if you're gonna fight for some reparations, you start from where you was dropped off. So if you're gonna continue to fight, you don't go against the people in America for reparations, you join up with them. Or you fight from where you at for reparations. So stop the conflict of going on with getting us against each other. This book talks about it. We were dropped all over the place.
Jews don't do that. They get from
That's
wherever
right.
they at.
Jews don't, and Obama allocated some money for him not too long ago when he was in office.
So wherever we at, we deserve.
So we have to get it together globally. Do not go into the conflict of going against the people here, trying to get something if you didn't go for it wherever you came from. So this book, and in Latin America. So we're talking all over. Israel's secret relationship with apartheid South Africa. You think you want to know who's really running South Africa? It's in that book. Terrence McLaughlin, The Social History as Seen Through the Uses and Abuses of Dirt. If you really want to see what's going on in Europe, the creation of the umbrella was not for rain. It wasn't to stop rain from when nature would rain. It was creation of umbrellas when they was throwing the human feces out of the window so you wouldn't get hit in the head. They created the umbrella. It had nothing to do with rain. It was raining something else. This book will tell you exactly how Europeans was living in Europe. And then you'll find out who civilized them. You hear a lot about reparations, you hear a lot about committees, you hear a lot about people getting together, you hear a lot of this back and forth and what should be done and all this, but I've never seen anybody come up with the books of the hangings, the books of the dogs, the books of the cutting off the hands, the books of the throwing the male in boiling hot sugar, oil, alive. The rapes of the women, the lashes, the dogs, the postcards, the hangings, the lashings, the dogs, the postcards.
Souvenirs, keeping ears on windows.
And if you go to the Black Wax Museum in Baltimore, I believe it's still open, you can see how they had cut the private parts of a male and have it in a jar, and the skin where they would take a razor blade and trim your skin to see when the skin would turn white. So this is the atrocities, what's going on, and every time we turn around, we see another study. Another study. Another study. And so they got the nerve to sign a bill and then tell you in California they're going to sign a bill and then tell you they don't have the money to pay. And why you sign the bill for?
They got money for war. They have the
It
money.
has nothing to do with what they got money for. You're going to sign a bill, say you're giving reparations, and then you're going to say you ain't got the money. We already know how the war machine. The gangs of New York. You think the Bloods and the Crips are something else? Go around the old 5 Points where City Hall is today. And you had the Dead Robins. The Bowery Boys was notorious. And this talks about the riots, the storming of the barricades. They even have pictures. The making of America. New York.
The hidden history of New York.
These gangs that they got now got nothing on the Irish gangs and the Italian gangs in the early days. And every black should read this book that wants to participate in some kind of gang activity. The gangs of New York. Empire Leon. Harry Cohen, William Fox, Carl Lambert, Louis B. Mayer, Jack and Harry Warner, Adolf Zukov, how they invented Hollywood and created events that did not happen. Big moguls, how they took control and built theaters all over the United States and controlled the distribution. See, if you don't control the distribution of your product and somebody else owns it, it'll never be yours. And everybody that tried it, the black artists, the movie people, they never was able to, only a few was able to get control. So when you look at the empire they own, it tells you, even in the 70s when Hollywood was going under and the black exploitation movies brought them out of the red, because we flocked to those movies. And one of the most devastating movies that they came out with was Birth of a Nation, where they dressed up in blackface and degraded us. And they're still doing it today. Especially with black men, putting them in dresses. And we still pay for our demise by going to these movies. And very rarely they will put a positive depiction of the black family and black people. They always got us scared and shivering and all kind of nonsense. Can't make a decision. So they disrespect us every single day. And we pay for our demise. But this book, anybody that's getting into the music industry should read this book. Tyreen Wright, Booker T. Washington, The Making of a Pan-Africanist. And if you think Booker T was a bad dude. Booker T. Washington, everybody say something different, but Booker T. was on the money. And we're going to bring Sister Tyreen Wright back here. In honor of Ayo Kamati. Jews are the problem, and his blockbuster, Jews Are the Problem, Part 2, The Psychology of the Jew. And Brother Ayo Kamati, Born the Horizon, and he's running for office in Baltimore. These two small publications has so much information for you to do in your research. So we want to thank Brother Ayo in this blockbuster. He has a 1-2 blockbuster. So Ayo Kamati, and he comes on Dope Incorporated. I want to thank Lyndon LaRouche, and everywhere you look around, you see the British got the Chinese, the Asians strung out with the opium dens. They got pictures in here. They got a book called Low Life, and got pictures of guy has a crack pipe in his hand. So smoking crack did not start with black folk. Here's a Chinese guy, Asian, from the Orient, with an opium pipe. So the British are very vicious. Now you have medical marijuana places all over the place. Weed, and they everywhere. And the Arabs are running the shops, the whites are running the shops, the blacks are running the shops, the Jews are running the shops, and they selling this legalized weed. And it's crazy. And you used to see people sitting in front of a liquor store that no, they waiting for the weed spot to open. And the man behind it is George Soros.
24-hour spots.
24-hour spots, as Lady V said. So get the book Dope Incorporated, and you'll get more. The manufacturing of a president. Everybody think Barack Hussein Obama when he busted into the scene. But according to Wayne Mansfield and there's another brother, Dexter Hartley, all CIA. Nothing but CIA. And this book talks about it, the manufacturing of a president. And they're doing the same thing now. They still do it. Oh. Cynthia McKinney, in my opinion, the only one that cared about the people of the state of Georgia. When China sneezes from the coronavirus lockdown to the global political economic crisis. And in my opinion, she was the only one that actually cared about the people of Georgia. And I wish she was still in Georgia for what's going on down there now, because them folks down there do not care about the people from Georgia. So, this book is in honor of Cynthia McKinney, and then there's another book she wrote called When Donald Trump Mentions a Country Being a S-hole country, there's a book called How the U.S. Creates S-hole Countries. So the words that Donald Trump said don't mean nothing, because him and the United States is a part of creating countries and making them S-hole countries. So Cynthia McKinney, you can get that book readily on Amazon. You could get it. Ain't nobody banning books, and if you got a problem with somebody banning books, then you get your own books. One of the baddest.
Thank you, brother, because I can't write all this down.
Okay, don't worry, we'll get it. We'll get it together.
I'm listening really intently.
We'll get it together. We'll get it together.
We'll need to get the names of the books later. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll get it together. We'll get it together. King George, I call him, the man behind the curtain. Whenever you want to read about somebody, not a documentary, you got to read the books. The unauthorized biography, the life and times and trading secrets of the world's greatest investor. And everybody think is Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is not the baddest. King George, George Soros. So when you want to read about somebody who they snuck out of Hungary, and he took the gold out of people's mouths. And it's another book, The Man Behind the Curtain, Inside the Secret Network of King George Soros. This cat has everybody on the payroll. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody. And it's a chapter in this book about the reparations phenomenon that's running around the country. So if you get this book, and it's another book, how George Soros and 60s radicals took control of the Democratic Party. And he has all of them under the payroll. It's financing a whole lot of movements that's going on. So this book is readily available. The whole world is running around talking about Donald Trump.
What about the Jewish guy that got more money than Warren Buffett?
Whenever you want to read about somebody, you get the books. So I just happened, I got a couple of other ones. And Dr. Lewis says Donald Trump's family came here with a suitcase, as a whole lot of other Europeans came with nothing on, nothing.
That's right. Clothes on their back.
Donald German immigrant grandfather Frederick came to America with one suitcase, limitless faith in his gut instincts.
Granddad was avoiding the war.
Now, this book is 500 pages, and it has in the back where the author got his reference from. Whenever you want to read about somebody, you get the book yourself, and you read about the individual instead of following people that's running around. Because Donald J. Trump would not be in office if the Democratic Party had did the right thing from the beginning. Get the books, and he has another book called The Art. He has another book called The Art of the Deal. So when is black folks going to get a deal to bring us out of the economic situation that we're in? So get all the books on Donald Trump, George Bush, Ronald Reagan, Barack Obama, and all the presidents that America picks an executive to run the country every 4 years.
Selected.
America selects the person who's going to run the country for another 4 years, and he's going to do exactly what the United States wants him to do. So whatever is being done is being done by the United States via the executive.
What's the real spelling of,
Neither safe nor effective. The evidence against the CO vaccine.
Sean?
Deception, the great cover-up. And when Rand Paul, they had the congressional hearings, they grilled them people. Of course, this thing is taking a lot of people away. Mark Sloan, the cancer industry, crimes, conspiracy, and the death of my mother. He wrote a book on it. Capitalism on the ventilator, the impact of CO-19 and the ventilators during the pandemic. In honor of Dr. Scott Whitaker out of Georgia, the causes, solutions, and disease and malnutrition to the medical sins that are killing the world. Our good friend Dr. Scott, and I never want to forget him. Bad man. The real Anthony Fauci. If you want to read diabolical, you get this book. This was the first one. The American Medical Killing Machine, finding facts that could save your life on what happens in the hospitals of the world. But thank God for the BK and Africans helping Africans, we have Dr. Lewis. Everybody's talking about the Epstein files. Now, she's not the first one to deal with the Epstein files, but this is what I just picked up, and this is volume 1 and volume 2. The sole union between intelligence, organized crime that gave rise to Jeffrey Epstein. One Nation Under Blackmail, volume 1 and 2. So, this young lady, Whitney Webb, wrote books, and there's some other books involved with it. And I'm going to tell you something right now. Regular people don't have enough money to go to the party. So all these regular people that's running around talking about the files and all this and that, your money ain't long enough. You can't get near the island. The island was only for ballers. Big money people, and all of them was at the party. The black ones and all of them was there. We wasn't allowed to go. Down the CO rabbit hole by independent studies. Edward Down, causes unknown, the epidemic of sudden death syndrome in 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25, where the young athletes in the prime of their life dying on the football fields. Young, strong. The heart rate. How did all of a sudden they start dropping dead on the football field? But Edward Down wrote a book. The Ultimate Vaccine Timeline, Facts-Packed History of Vaccines and Their Makers. This book goes into the early creation of vaccines in the 1800s. 1885, 1777, 1780.
Killed more people than people that didn't take it.
This is a timeline, and we want to thank Robert Kennedy and Children's Health Defense. This is a timeline, and it goes all the way up to the present. And the last blockbuster is the Pfizer papers. We want to thank Naomi Wolf, Freedom of Information Act, Crimes Against Humanity. The blood. What happens to the blood? What happens to the individual? And they forced Pfizer. I don't know how they was able to, how Moderna, the big ballers at Moderna, of course they had the book, the Moderna files.
That's right.
And they stopped it, and it tells you about the blood and everything that goes on. And for anybody that was involved, you have to get this book and read it, because the public has to know, and a lot of things should not be hidden. That's one thing that history tells you about. They bring out the hidden facts that they don't want you to see, but it's in the books. So I'm gonna have some community events. Thursday, Thorough Black Talk, Tad, Keisha, Brother Blacksmith, Sister Mama, the Freedmen's Bureau, and they come on every Thursday at 8 o'clock, and they really get involved with the reparation move and everything, and we want to thank them. They're doing a lot of stuff, so that comes on 8 o'clock on Facebook. Tad, Ashe, Sister Mama, excellent team, laying it down. Our family out of Philadelphia, Blog Talk Radio with Sister Empress, Brother Lumumba. That comes on Saturday at 10:30, and they have programs during the week. But the Saturday program is a blockbuster, comes on at 10 o'clock. And Sister Empress is really putting it on. Brother Lumumba, El Pollinator, Brother Moses, and everybody is getting it on. I done missed a few shows, but I'll be back. Io Kamati, the Irritated Genie. Sankofa Revolutionary Radio. That's WSYP 95.1 out of Birmingham, Alabama. That's Brother Anthony Mohammed. That's a Monday program on Sankofa Revolutionary Radio. They give you Dr. Haru from 9 to 10 with his products and health problems. Then Io Kamani comes on from 10 to 11. That's every Monday, Sankofa Revolutionary Radio. Also, our good friend, State of the City, Brother Darren Muhammad out of Baltimore. That Saturday program, State of the City, comes on at 12 o'clock on Facebook and Instagram under Darren Muhammad, State of the City. That's a blockbuster program, comes on at 12 o'clock. And also he shifts up on Thursday and Friday. So Wednesday and Thursday, it alternates. So we want to thank Brother Darren Muhammad. Every Tuesday at 7 o'clock, Dr. Halim, Your Immunity Project. That comes on 7 o'clock on Kalfani Radio, and he has a Zoom program. So you can get on that.
So on YouTube. Nikki?
I'm okay. I just lost my balance.
You all right?
I'm good. It's just happened my
give him-
coordination get off.
Get him a glass of water. You want some water?
Yeah, I'm okay, bro.
Hot water.
Okay, every Friday we have African Echoes. That's Brother Trust Graham and the African Echoes family out of Newark, New Jersey. That comes on at 8 o'clock, and African Echoes has their own study group, and Trust Graham's the mediator of that, and they're doing the psychology of self-hatred. Then they give you a Saturday program, the Know Thyself study group out of Asbury Park. Brother True and the gang, they're doing the destruction of black civilization, and that comes on Saturday at 1:30. The Simotap organization with Dr. James McIntosh. The Simotap is doing a whole lot of excellent things going after Netflix, and they're having a lot of community events, so we want to thank Sister Betty, Brother James McIntosh, and Simotap. Also, the UNIA and its gallant effort to change my mind and Race First, President Michael Duncan and Raymond Dugal, the UNIA, and their relentless attempt to change the minds of African people. They also have a store called The Rock at 13205 Merritt Boulevard, right across the street from Home Depot, inside Bergknapp Street, and it's a mini Jetros, and you could go there and get wholesale goods and everything. Excellent atmosphere, and you don't have to cry about what's going on in our stores with all these outsiders and other people that own these stores disrespecting black folks and these big block stores and going to protest all these stores and this and that. All you got to do is go to The Rock. And when you go to The Rock, you won't have to worry about being disrespected or nowhere because you're buying from your own people. So I want to thank the gallant effort of the UNIA in changing the minds of African people, my mind and everybody else's mind, to at least once a month go to the store and spend some money. We want to thank the UNIA, so give them a big hand. So ladies and gentlemen,
For everybody in the store look like you.
It's an excellent store, wholesale, sea moss, big bags of lima beans and all kind of seasoning and boxes of fish.
Yes, sir.
And let me tell you, it's right off Merritt Boulevard, and they're trying their best to get a big facility, so when you go there, you don't have to worry about the cashier giving you a dirty look or people running around, I don't know where this is, I don't know where, and you're buying in bulk.
Talk about it, brother.
It's a baby Jetros. And you will not get disrespected because everybody in there is nice, polite. So if you could, African people could just go there once a month, get in your car and go to that place, and when you come out, you will not feel bad. So ladies and gentlemen,
Does the Long Island Railroad go there? It's
we'll let you know, we'll let you
Okay,
know.
thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have our noted friend, always a good friend, for Mackey's, and I remember reading the Daily Challenge, and he wants to get his information out. The great Dr. Fred Monderson is coming up with his experience, and there's very few people that follow the orders of Dr. Ben. Dr. Monderson is one of them, and you can view all the BK African Health and Africans lectures with Dr. Lewis and everybody on YouTube under BK History Club. You go in there, and anything you got to say about the people, you could come down here and you could talk to them yourself. So ladies and gentlemen, this is part one, but he has at least 7 or 8 lectures on YouTube under BK History Club. We want to give a great big hand. Sonny Carson's favorite, Dr. Fred Monderson. Abumadika!
All right.
Hey,
His name is in Ghana.
you didn't send him. He's making the deal.
His name is on that wall, man. Woo. Going no return.
Good evening, brothers and sisters at home and abroad.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It is an honor for me to be here with you tonight. The weather couldn't keep me away. Well, horses couldn't keep me away. I've got one of my Dr. Ben's books. In the event that anyone wants a copy, Celebrating Dr. Ben. It's one of my classic pieces. The first of 3, and then I'm coming out with another within a couple of months because so much is going on. But Celebrating Dr. Ben. This should be on your mantle in your library. Celebrating Dr. Ben, Johanna. As you know, I like to come prepared, and I like to have my work prepared before I get here. Sorry about the delay. I gotta get my bicycle together. You know how these things go. I can't run up the stairs as I used to, but I'm here. I've been asked to speak about Tom Watkins, publisher. How does one evaluate the measure of a man?
Good question.
Tom Watkins, publisher. Tall, lanky, somewhat balding, wore a hat, and often flashed a broad, infectious smile. He was a great American, a great black, and undoubtedly a tenacious, foresightful, tremendously compassionate individual. More important, a significant champion of intellectual audacity who encouraged and promoted the telling of the black history story experience. While working on my presentation, I received a call from Brother Ray informing me of the passing of Tom Watkins, which I was not aware of, who published the Daily Challenge, the Afro Times, the New American, as well as the Passaic, New Jersey Challenge. Oftentimes is the same paper in New York that gets over there. This was a powerful family group of newspapers Tom Watkins inherited from his father, which he, Tom, nurtured as a clarion call far beyond regular political, cultural, religious news, emphasizing international black cultural heritage, history, and symbolism in profound activist and intellectual fashion. You know, you probably can remember Ozzie D and Ruby, Ozzie Davis and Ruby D. When Elambe Brock passed, Ruby D said, he's an activist. We only play activists. That guy, I'm an OG. I bid my brothers, G2 Sonny, Elambe, Abubakar, and all of them farewell. That guy on TV, he just plays an OG. I'm the real OG, trust me. In similar manner, Tom Watkins was an OG, an activist OG. I wrote for the Challenge, in fact, for all three newspapers. In the 1990s especially, I wrote 2 full-length pages for both the Afro Times and the New American, as well as a regular staple for the Daily Challenge that was also redistributed in Passaic. So much so, in his call to memorialize Tom Watkins, Brother Ray reminded me, he said, I learned about you through the Challenge when the price was 25 cents back in the day. I actually wrote more than 1,000 published pieces pro bono under the editors DeWard Phillip, Andre Pennick Smith, Charlene Devonish, and Mr. Garrett. I don't remember his last name. Fortunately, Tom did not micromanage his publication, but allowed his editors freedom to tell the black story, whether it concerned Sonny Carson and repatriation of his ancestor Samuel Carson back to Ghana, West Africa, which resulted in President Jerry Rawlings establishing the annual Global Emancipation Day celebration.
Another ancestor.
The fight apartheid movement that involved the House of the Lord Church under Reverend Howard Daughtry, leader that encouraged and supported SASA, Sisters Against South African Apartheid, that helped free Nelson Mandela, then celebrated his visit to Brooklyn and New York. Certainly, the Million Man March, walking the East Capitol Mile, I'll tell you about that, in 1995. The Million Family March, Million Family Man March in 2000. It's all in the Challenge. Tom told the story. Million Man March, Justice or Else, in 2015. The Million Woman March in 1998 in Philadelphia. And the Million Youth March in Harlem and in Brooklyn. Dr. Jack, we call him Black Fella, while we both taught middle school, he would visit the Challenge office, collect the newspapers, especially ones with my article, when I said, yeah, the Challenge newspaper, and then share these out to the teachers and the students in keeping with his mantra, stay black, stay strong. I was on the front page of the Daily Challenge 4 times, once in an anti-apartheid protest, twice sharing that position with Minister Louis Farrakhan. Ms. Nafatari and Black History was my article on the front page, especially when Farrakhan protested the silencing of Winnie Mandela when she came. They told her, if you want to come to America, you can't speak. And he was very upset, and it was on the front page of the Challenge, and I was share that front page with him. Thanks to the broad-mindedness of Tom Watkins and to the Daily Challenge, I was able to chronicle the saga of O.J. Simpson in 19 volumes, which I registered with the Library of Congress on the day of the 1995 Million Man March, when there was a fellow named Sid. I could never forget. He had a portion of his arm was cut. He followed me into the office of the Library of Congress, saying that after we came off Dr. McIntosh had a bus, and I was able to get on that bus. And that day I was carrying 19 volumes in a big bag to register about Black history. It's not about O.J.'s day. I said, somebody say, he gonna be in there for a long time. So I wrote all these letters to him and all that, and then I registered it on 1991. So Sid said, I want to make history 2 times. So he was on March, and he went with me into the Library of Congress. And much of that was published in Tom Watkins' Daily Challenge. For that I wrote, which was published in the Challenge, Walking the East Capitol Mile. That is to say, the buses dropped us off in RFK Stadium, where the Washington Redskins, at the time they were called, we were dropped in there, and then we walked from there to the Capitol building. So I wrote a piece published in the Challenge called Walking the East Capitol Mile. I documented Sonny Carson, G. DeWusi, Alambre Broad, Dr. Ben Johannan, Dr. John Clark, Marcus Garvey, Honoring the Giant, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, and Dr. Conrad Warren. I documented the bones of Samuel Carson. I wrote letters to Mike Tyson. I wrote about Farrakhan in Brooklyn. And all of these were in the Daily Challenge. Andrea Smith and Shirley Devonish encouraged publication of untold articles on ancient Egyptian art, architecture, history, and more. One professor in the West Indies was teaching history, architecture, and art based on what I was writing in the Challenge, because the editor was sending that material to him. Most significant for my researches at the Bodleian Library in Oxford University, Andrea Smith published my articles on Atlantic slave trade to the Americas. Thanks to the encouragement of DeWan Phillips, I wrote nearly 200 articles in the Challenge, chronicling both Barack Obama's administrations. Both the hurricane and the earthquake in Haiti was published in Tom Watkins' newspapers. They were given a voice. How strange and fortunate that I've had the opportunity, the privilege to live and tell about the glorious age of Tom Watkins' Daily Challenge encouragement, providing a bridge for the young that emphasizes the life's work and significance of Tom Watkins, publisher who, through his family newspapers, acting as a reservoir of knowledge, as a bulwark against racism, misinformation, disinformation, made a mark, highlighted a heritage, so that tomorrow's leaders, who, for the most part, are unaware of many of these issues, Mr. Watkins championed in the Daily Challenge. Thomas Watkins was an internationalist, a Brooklyn, New York, and national icon. Without a doubt, he was a quintessential New Yorker. My fellow brothers and sisters, I tried to say something about that noble man, and there you have it.
May you rest in peace. Daily challenge.
Thank you very much. They gave me the opportunity as a young guy. I started out because I wanted to get my name in the newspaper. Okay. And, you know, they wanted to encourage me, and I wrote it. I perfected my skill. So I'm here today, and I'm going to speak to you about the Greco-Roman temple experience, part 1. I began by saying, man and woman, know yourself. Man, know thyself. But what does that mean? It means that you must know who you are. Dr. Leonard James, my principal mentor, he said, be able to decode your environment. You must know what's in front of you, what's to the side, what's behind. Most significant, there is a philosophical and religious connotation to this statement. Back in 1992, I was at the Free Library in Philadelphia, and one of the principals invited was Maulana Karenga. He was the creator of Kwanzaa. And the question about afterlife came up, and he spoke about the fear and trembling as one stood before your God in the final hours to give voice to what you have done, given the opportunity to be alive on the face of the earth. And he spoke about the preparation and what to expect when faced with the tribunal in the house of the double Marty. You had to confess the negative confessions as well as the positive confession. And finally, if you are true of voice or Markeru, you would be allowed to exist in the afterlife in a positive, pure environment. It's interesting that, again, in the challenge, I was able to chronicle Sonny Carson, Sonny Carson's, I'm looking for a word, but when Sonny is confrontation with St. Peter. So Sonny was on his way, and he arrived at the pearly gates, and he saw this gentleman with a long white beard sitting there before the gates, and he approached him, and the first thing he would say is, "What have you done with your miserable life?" And you know, Sonny, Tom Watkins over there. So he said, yeah, he started to be vulgar, but he held his tongue. And he began to explain to St. Peter the things that he had done. And as he looked beyond the gates, the pearly gates in the fence, he could see all of the great musicians, whether it was as far back as Nat Turner, and I like to think about Baby Huey, who sang about change is gonna come. He did Sam Cooke's piece. You know, Baby Huey said, "I'm from Indiana. We're brothers. We still have outhouses, and brothers wear pointed-toe shoes and carry 45s." So I was able to, through the daily challenge, give Sonny his props when he confronted. Finally, the people on the outside of the said, let him in, let him in, let him in. And after he explained to St. Peter, he said, well, listen, you have to understand, I work for the brother, no, I work for the man with the lamb's wool hair. And it is my job to investigate everyone. But you've proven that you deserve to be here. And as soon as Sonny got into the gate, everybody crowded and said, he said, what's going on? So he wanted to reorganize heaven. So I was able to show that in the daily challenge, thanks to Tom Watkins' allowing his editors free rein to tell the black story.
It was
So-
to let Muhammad of his death.
So, man, know thyself. There is much controversy, contradiction about the Greeks in Egypt, as it related in both ancient and modern times. Much of this issue is gleaned from the following sources, as for example, in Stone Legacy 1954, George G.M. James exposed and destroyed the Greek plot. Martin Bernal in Black Athena, the Afro-Asiatic Roots of Classic Civilization, Volume 1, The Fabrication of Ancient Greece, 1785 to 1985. He did a thorough analysis and pointed out how the falsity came about. Chick Antioch in Civilization of Barbarism and Authentic Anthropology, 1981 to 1991. And Theophile Benga in African Philosophy, 2004, devastatingly decoded the false projection Western scholarship in formulating their nascent identity, thereby accorded and elevated the Greco-Roman experience, particularly emanating from the Greek sojourn in Egypt, even as they demeaned the Nile Valley culture and the people as being primitive and of a lesser breed. It is interesting that Ben Johanan often invited his students to his apartment in Lennox Terrace, Harlem, to show them his extensive library. But most importantly, he took groups to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and one society he was said to the front desk, "We are here to see the primitives." So then they would point him to the African exhibit. He said, no, we're here to see the Egyptian exhibit. They are first, they are therefore primitive. Adamantly asserting his insistence, they finally relented and allowed him to proceed, not to the primitive Africans, but to the primitive Egyptian exhibit.
Which is
However, when through archaeology and associated disciplines, Western and American scholarship and culture influences, publicists realized the originality, potency, and profound nature of Egyptian culture in art, science, religion, philosophy, these thinkers turned around and claimed these Africans of Egypt as our ancestors. I just heard Martin did a little clip this weekend on Dr. King, and he was talking about our sick white brothers.
ain't no brothers in mine.
Well, right. Sometimes you have to be diplomatic. A distortion in that age of European dominance perpetuated in falsity of global white supremacy ideology. This significant African heritage is what and why we must reinforce in the thinking of our young scholars. Dr. Leonard James called it developing an intellectual autonomy. Let's face it, naked military arrogance was clothed in culture and philosophy, albeit a false nature. Hence, Bernal deconstruction of the fabrication aside, James and Obenga importantly looms large as icons in promoting African-Egyptian historiographic reconstruction. Important too, Dr. Yosef Ben Johanan and Professor George Simmons makes it equally important in The Black Man's North and East Africa, 1971, again 2005. Of course, his Black Man of the Nile and his family underscores the same idea. Significantly, however, is the manner in which the great Senegalese Egyptologist, analyst, linguist, historian, Cheikh Anta Diop, 1981-1991, pages 334-35, tore down the false monument edifice of Greek miracle, even that monstrosity of Catholic purity. Now, while Greece has gotten tremendous credit for the cultural ascendancy that powered Western civilization across the broad swath of knowledge and culture, viz. in art and architecture, religion and mythology, philosophy and science, literature and the arts, medicine, astronomy, and the living and the dead, significantly, much of that Greek culture was recovered in modern times through Egyptian papyrus. This meant Greek culture blossomed in Egypt, and therefore modern thinkers are guilty of omission. Nevertheless, such is the view in modern times. Much thought has been devoted to the area of science, cosmology, philosophy, and literature, for these seems to be the shining light of Greek ideas, most often celebrated, that subsequently impacted the evolution of Western scientific, religious, and artistic culture. Thus, as a source of their intellectual wellspring, we must look to ancient Egypt. For a while, much of this is chronicled in Martin Bernal's Black Athena, it's 2 volumes set, 1987. Just as important, Teofilo Benga in African philosophy, the Pharaonic period, references the source of knowledge regarding Greek lack of historical heritage, as he writes, referring to an ancient incident. He writes, what the ancient Egyptian priests meant was that the Greeks of that age, unlike the Egyptians, had no body of thoughts bequeathed by antiquity, no ancient tradition, no knowledge hallowed by time. In time, the Greeks received much of their knowledge from abroad, especially from the land of the pharaohs, where people had started out on the adventure of civilization millennia before them. One aspect of this is evident in the early emergence of Egyptian creation theory and the balanced creative act, even the initial misunderstanding of the quantity and abundance of Egyptian art and ideas, religion and philosophical practices. Let us remember from the past lecture here, the Heliopolitan theology with Ra, Atum, and the 4 pairs of gods. The Memphite theology of Ptah, rescued by Shuakta, 25th Ethiopian dynasty, who found a papyrus moth-eaten and had it transcribed onto a black base or a piece of stone. And the Arabs turned that into, destroyed some of the inscription, but sufficient had been saved so that we were able to understand how Ptah created the world and the gods who came about from that. The Hermopolitan theology, where the god Thoth laughed 8 times and 4 pairs of gods appeared with predestined functions, and as he laughed and he smiled, they came into being, and those 8 and himself became what is called the Hermopolitan Ennead. Ognod Ennead. So the Ognod, the 9, actually 10 at Hermopolis, 9 at Memphis, 9 at Hermopolis. Heliopolis and Hermopolis are different places. The Ammonian theology, where the Ennead comprised 15 gods, but the 3 principals was Amun, his wife Mun, and his son Khonsu. And of course, Khnum. Khnum is the god who made man on his potter's wheel. He did not use snow. He made it through using Nile mud. Alright, so you can figure out what type of human being he made as a result of that. Of course, before we know about Hermopolis, where Ra and Atum were the principal divinities. But Ra, before he created the world as we know it, he lived in Nubia. And after he started on this work of creation, the first thing he did was to create the black people, the Nubians. So Ra created the black people, quote unquote, before he created the Egyptian, quote unquote. So if as Dr. Diop would point out, if we give the European his false claim that the Egyptians were white folks, why would they color their gods black? Let's face it. If cows had gods, their gods would look like cows. Cows wouldn't make their gods look like pigs. So if the gods were black, it meant that the people who created those gods were black. And when you go to the farthest extreme in Western Europe, you see their gods have this big, full face of beard, red, what have you. This is what their gods look like. Okay. Now, this particular issue is addressed by Dr. Diop in Civilization or Barbarism. He's saying then that if these people say are so civilized, why are they acting so barbaric? If we consider the Greek school of idealism, Plato, Aristotle, the Stoics, there appears to be no essential difference with Egypt. Because here too, we are dealing with a barely modified Egyptian thought. Everywhere in the Platonic cosmogony, and in the Aristotelian metaphysics, myth peacefully coexists with concept. Plato could even be called, and rightfully so, Plato the mythologist. But things changed radically with the Greek materialistic school. The principles, the laws of nature, the laws of natural evolution become intrinsic properties of matter, which no longer necessitate coupling even symbolically with any divinity. They are self-sufficient. Likewise, any primary cause of a divine nature is rejected. That's what they're saying. The world was never created by any divinity. Matter was always in existence. Some cultures argue that their principal God, through magic, created everything. What Dr. Obenga is saying, among other things, is that the force of divinity that created the world as we know it today existed in a parallel universe and stepped out of that universe into this universe and found uncreated matter, principally water, and he began the process of creating. If we think about it, each one of the divinities and the resonant place in which their religion was practiced, whether it's at Heliopolis, Memphis, Hermopolis, Thebes, or at Elephantine, Dr. Carruthers reminded us, these are not competing entities, but these are the same God force operating through different perspectives or different lenses in different time period. So the Ra, his site of worship was prominent in the Old Kingdom, and so too Ptah. By the Middle Kingdom, Thoth is prominent. By the New Kingdom, Middle and New Kingdom, it's Amun. And then Khnum is one of the most ancient of the gods, so he's been along for the ride from the beginning. We hear so much, at the end of the Middle Ages, throughout the Middle Ages, religious spiritualism, the Catholic Church in this case, tried to accommodate itself to Greek philosophical idealism. particularly Aristotelianism, the philosophy of Aristotle. But at the end of the Middle Ages, scholasticism lost its vigor, and the Renaissance inaugurated the era of Democritus, Epicurus, and Lucretius, who was championed by Galileo, Descartes, Kant, Newton, Leibniz, Lavoisier. In his Civilization of Barbarism, back to Critique Descartes, I mean, he's all of that, who, like Aristotle, was wrong on several issues. You see, well, some of this stuff is so profound, we need extra help. If we go back to the 70s, there were two prominent racists, Christopher Jenks and William Shockley, and they were promoting the whole notion of white supremacy. And what they were writing was so technical, we needed to get this black psychologist out of Harvard named Alvin Toussaint, and he broke it down, and so that us at the bottom could understand what they were saying. Then we had this guy named Morgan Worthy, and he wrote this piece on the science, and he was arguing that blue-eyed people were superior to non-blue-eyed people, and he used two individuals, Pete Rose and Joe Namath. And in the case of Joe Namath in football, he came up with these two concepts, which is self-paced and reactive. That is to say, the blue-eyed guy, Joe Namath, as a quarterback, could throw the ball, and the blacks as running backs or receivers would catch it. So self-paced and reactive. And then we needed, I always have a little problem, Doug Williams. Doug Williams, the first black quarterback, you know, John Elway, for the old people, you know. John Elway was a great quarterback from Denver, right? I could never forget that morning. I'm watching the game, and he comes up with a big broad smile. He said, "I would knock this black guy out." Doug Williams beat him 42-13, right? So we had, because they were saying that the blacks can't win the Super Bowl, right? No black quarterback to win the Super Bowl, and Doug Williams broke that mantra. So they make it so difficult sometimes. We need our scholars. I'm not putting myself in that category, but I'm trying my best. Okay. But at the end of the Middle Ages, scholasticism lost its vigor, and the Renaissance inaugurated the era of Democritus, Epicurus, Lucretius, Galileo, Descartes, Kant, Newton, Leibniz, Lavoisier. In Civilization or Barbarism, back to Critique Descartes, who, like Aristotle, was wrong on several issues. We needed him to point that out to us. The modern atomists have often been strongly inspired by this school, which, in its passing on of Egyptian thought, is largely responsible for modern science, even if one pretends not to notice. So the point is that these people are guilty not only of misinformation, distortion, but omission. That is to say, you don't know about it, well, it doesn't exist. That's why we gotta get these young people going to the library. The weather's kept me out, but I visit the 42nd Street Research Library pretty frequently. There's not enough of our young people visiting. They have a new system there now where you gotta go elsewhere to get a library card. But a lot of European visitors, especially young people, come abroad, come to New York, go to the library, get a library card. Not that they're using it, but it's like, if you ever walked across the Brooklyn Bridge, they used to have these padlocks on the fences until the government cut it down and said don't do that. So we got to get our young people out there understanding the critical nature of our existence as it is today. What are the forces that are arrayed against us? And how do we decode our environment, develop intellectual autonomy, and move forward, because we have the young people need to think about the next generation. They are the next generation, but there's still another generation after them. The word of Ra is the logos of Heraclitus. You see now, the Greeks took these African ideas and repackaged them and presented them. And the people who are scholars today, whether they know it or not, they are promoting falsity, and we who don't know any different accept what they're saying, because, you know, I shouldn't be saying this, but this gentleman contacted me, said he'd been trying to find me for years, you know, he's out of West Virginia, you know, and he said, you know, our people are in bad shape in West Virginia. I said, what do you mean? He said, you know, most of them say, well, the white man is God and that's it, you know, forget about everything else, you know? But, you know, we have to question everything, right? So the word Ra is the logos of Heraclitus and Plato. It is also the nous of Anaxagoras and the core of the revealed religion. Osiris and Isis are Adam and Eve of the future revealed religion. They were, before there was Adam and Eve's ancestors were Osiris and Isis. We don't know them. In the cosmology of Thebes, the god Amun will say, I am the god who became by myself and who was not created. Finally, the Heliopolitan cosmogony appears with traits of a philosophy of becoming, in the strict sense of the German word warden. Ra, again, say, I am the great God who became by myself. I am yesterday and I know tomorrow. Osiris, the personification of the good, is the son of Ra, as Christ is the son of God. Similarly, the Gnostic philosophers of the 2nd century were inspired by the old Egyptian religion. All of them more so because they were Egyptians themselves and because Christianity first developed mainly in Egypt. The contention is further clarified by Dr. Benga, who explained Heraclitus of Ephesus, about 540 to 480 BC, taught that God, also known as harmony, was the eternal principle of an equally eternal universe. The universe was one, since its soul was one, and the ultimate goal of human existence was integration into the universal soul, which was God. There was also the thesis of Plato, according to which the cosmos was born as a work of the demiurge in his beneficent divinity. Created by the demiurge, it lasts forever because that is the creator's wish. So Plato comes on the scene of the first of the, well, there's Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. All right. So Plato gets a lot of play, and he creates this idea of the demiurge. But the demiurge was first created by Ra in Heliopolis, and again by Ptah at Memphis. But who, if you don't know, as they say in the old country, strangers don't know burial ground. You walk into a, you know, people buried over there. Like right now. Okay, I've been trying to, this is a side, but the Brooklyn Navy Yard used to be a segregated black cemetery. I have 250 names of blacks who were buried in the Navy Yard. The earliest name I have is of a Marine buried in 1801. They used to dump out people over there after they served, right? I was asked Dr. Clark about African burials. I'm actually coming up with a book called Eternal House. I didn't have the money to register it with the Library of Congress, but it's practically finished. He said, we put them away nicely. Okay? These blacks that served the nation and were buried in the Navy Yard, they were not put away nicely. In 1925, the Navy removed several hundred names of bones and reinterred them in Cypress Hills National Cemetery. This year, 2026, is a centenary of that move. Not all were moved, because in 1995, the Navy found Samuel Carson, Sonny Carson's ancestor, and turned the bones over to Sonny. Sonny created the Bones Committee. I was the chairman of the Bones Committee. And the bones were reinterred to Ghana, West Africa. I mentioned that with Tom Watkins giving voice to the repatriation of Samuel Carson back to Ghana. I wrote to several people asking for permission to have a prayer vigil in the Navy Yard to mark the 100. 100 years is a significant milestone. You know, I haven't gotten any assistance from that, even the borough president. My society has endorsed this. We sent word, among other people, to the borough president, Reynoldson. That word from him. But we will keep, because this year, until December 31st, which is 2026, marking 100 years, we are still trying to hold a prayer vigil at the Brooklyn Navy Yard that was sacred ground. When Sonny Carson came back from Ghana after taking his ancestor over there, he tried to get, the Navy was divesting of its property across the country. He was trying to get some kind of black footprint for business purposes on the Navy Yard. Rudy Giuliani gave all the slots to his cronies. We don't have any footprint on the Navy Yard. So the fact of the matter is that we need to get this prayer vigil. We want to make sure that those brothers and sisters that are still buried in the Navy Yard, maybe one, maybe who knows. Well, we want to honor them by having a prayer, because we know that they weren't given any kind of prayer when they were dumped in the Navy Yard. That was a black segregated cemetery. As referenced earlier, this demiurge of Plato is actually Ra Atum of Heliopolis, who created the world. Ptah of Memphis, Thoth of Hermopolis, Khnum of Elephantine and Esna. He had two temples, two sites. Esna, Dr. Diab pointed out that the French Egyptologist Emile Amelino was the only person who publicized that the black people of the Sudan sailed down the Nile founding cities such as Ermont, Esna, and Heliopolis, where Ra predominated. Okay, back in around 1900 or so, okay, maybe his methodology of archaeological excavation did not fit, quote unquote, the correct method that Flinders Petrie introduced. So what I learned back then was that this guy ransacked tombs and tried to sell relics in Paris. But no one ever, until Diab, 1974, came up with the idea that Amelino first pointed out that these blacks founded cities as they sailed down the Nile. You know, the whole idea of the initial idea of the arrival of the Caucasians in Egypt is that they came across the isthmus of Suez and sailed up the Nile. Alright? And the great Eduardo his name. He was references an individual that was facing the south. He talked about the west being to his right. You had a north. No, what is it? He was heading. Yeah. He was heading south. The river runs from south to north, right? The Nile. So Dr. Diop said, no, he wasn't really ascending the Nile. He was actually turning to pray to the source from which he came, which is from the south. Just as the Muslim will face Mecca when he makes his prayers, right? So the whole notion that the Europeans came in and ascended the Nile is falsity. Avelino said that the Nubians sailed down the Nile and founded these cities, including, but most principally, Heliopolis, where Ra predominated. Okay, and I'm going to say the first great principle. Important lesson reflect on Dr. Corona's insights that the five divinities are not comparative, but must be seen as one from different perspectives, and we can even say different time periods. Nevertheless, I'm reminded of how, I didn't read the book again, I was reading Edith Hamilton on Greek mythology. She was talking about how Zeus created the world. Well, the world was already created, but it depends on, again, Dr. Ben Loon so large, insights in our minds. He talked about when he was a youngster, and he must have been like what we would call pre-K today. So the teacher took him downtown to see the world's tallest building. When they get down there, these little kids, and they look up like that, there was this 2-story building. He was in St. Croix, in Virgin Islands, and then they moved to Puerto Rico, and he saw them went through the same experience. And when they went look up, it was a 9-story building. Finally, family moved to New York, right? And then he became aware of the Sears building with 105 stories. So what he did say is that each one of these experiences is a different world that he lived in. And it's the same thing. So if we accept that Edith Hamilton tells us how Zeus created the world. It created the world after the world was created several times over. We need to know this. So the Greek world, she created the Greek world even after the Africans had done so. However, in all this, while the good has been amplified, the bad has been relegated to a backseat. Nevertheless, we are warned, beware of Greeks bearing gifts. Throughout political and social history, there have been but 4 instances, perhaps more, where good and bad, or right and wrong, collided in an ancient, as in ancient Egypt. Even in modern times, that both parties end up being satisfied or settling on an agreeable or positive outcome. The first instance dealt with Psammetichus. He was the 26th dynasty. They followed the Ethiopians of the 25th dynasty. 26th dynasty pharaoh. He was confronted with the expanding Greek activity fueled in spheres of influence. We learned about this in Africa in the 19th century, where the Europeans started to send out people who opened up little businesses and then created that this territory belonged to spheres of influence. Spheres of influence manipulation that resulted in the seizure of territory in the African nation. That is to say, Greek expansion in Egypt, first through Mediterranean trade together with that of the Phoenicians, of which they enjoyed a hefty monopoly, and then through other aspects of skullduggery, given they were asked to defend Egypt and so employed as mercenaries. Such a crescendo was part of an unfolding conquest. In fact, as Dr. Diop explained, Egypt was now faced with a conundrum. To explain the evolving solution, he then quotes Comte Volney from his voyages in Syria and in Egypt on the Egyptian race, the black man, during the time of the Greeks, as is also done in his Ruins of Empire, where he also commented. But the whole history of Egypt, as we shall see, shows that this is Comte Volney speaking. But the whole history of Egypt, as we shall see, shows that the mixture of the early population with white nomadic elements, conquerors or merchants, became increasingly important at the end, as the end of Egyptian history approached. According to Cornelius de Paul, in the Lower Epo, Egypt was almost saturated with foreign white colonies. Arabs and Coptos, Libyans on the future site of Alexandria, Jews around the city Hercules or Avaris, Babylonians and Persians below Memphis, fugitive Trojans in the area of the great stone quarries east of the Nile, Carians and Ionians over all of the Pelusian branch. Psammiticus, end of the 7th century, capped this peaceful invasion of entrusting the defense of Egypt to Greek mercenaries. An enormous mistake of Pharaoh Psammiticus was to commit the defense of Egypt to foreign troops and to introduce various colonies made up of the dregs of the nations. Under the last Seleucid dynasty, the Greeks were officially established at Naucratis, the only port where foreigners were authorized to engage in trade. I'm coming back to this. Okay, even further, okay, so a lot of whites were in the north. So when we get much of the Caucasian Egypt falsity, remember now, the south was always black. The furthest you ascend the Nile is the blacker the people were, right? And then in 1905, this guy, Randall McIver, he published this piece called Eureka, in which he was arguing for two races on the banks of the Nile. Whites in the north and blacks in the south. This is the whites he's talking about. But they didn't just come here from the beginning. They come there at the end. But in the shenanigans, this is what they're telling us, and we need to be critical of all information. That's why Dr. Leonard James is insisting that we develop intellectual autonomy, which allows us to decode our environment so that we can understand what it is that we are reading or what is being spoken to us. I mean, if we look at our president today, I mean, the people who he's speaking, and there's a guy decoding what he's saying, but his market base feels that everything he said is precious, truthful, relevant. That's what it is. False. Even further, Diop continued on Volney's thought. But returning to Egypt, the lesson she teaches contains many reflections for philosophy. What a subject for meditation to see the present barbarism and ignorance of the Copts, descendants of the lines between the profound genius of the Egyptians and the brilliant mind of the Greeks. Just think that this race of black men, today, our slaves, he's writing at the end of the 18th century, 1790s, that is the time of the French Revolution. Today, our slaves and the object of our scorn is the very race to which we owe our arts, sciences, even the use of speech. Just imagine, finally, that is in the midst of people who call themselves the greatest friends of liberty. This is Volney. At the end of the 18th century, right after the American Revolution, the French Revolution, he visited Egypt and he came away with these ideas. And even the use of speech. Just imagine, finally, that is in the midst of people who call themselves the greatest friends of liberty and humanity, that one has approved the most barbarous slavery and questioned whether black men have the same kind of intelligence as whites. Such developments began to affect the body politic of Egypt, evidenced as the rising influence of foreigners manifested. Long past the days when mighty warrior pharaohs defended their nation, even as they subjugated neighboring states, near and far. Significantly, throughout its long history, Egypt never paid tribute to Chinese, to Hittites, to Syrians, to Greeks, whoever. These people paid tribute to Egypt in thought, deed, and resources. Therefore, in combating the threatening situation and in the stroke of diplomatic genius, to come back to Semiticus, the king agreed to offer the Greeks the ungraded city of Naucratis to conduct their affairs, requiring that they move every activity to within the limits of the city and so confine them to one location. In this way, the Egyptians were able to control, to a very great extent, spreading Greek influence, curb the initial disregard for Egyptian culture and territorial integrity in their settlement, which involved schooling, acquisition of long-developed bases of knowledge, and these thereby being precursors to later Greek conquest, siege of knowledge, and dishonest claims to ownership in matters of science and religion amidst claims of Greek philosophy. So, nevertheless, it returned out of evil cometh good. So he was able to force all of them into one city and to curb their spreading influence over the country. So out of evil cometh good. Nevertheless, in returning to the good out of evil or bad, example, two instances are referenced. Evil measuring Egyptian against Greek intellect, as the negative poet assigned art to the African and reason to the Greek. However, I don't agree with that. Was Houphouët Boigny. I didn't agree with him. The negative poem from I think it was Senegal or one of those places, right? In shedding light on this Egyptian-Greek comparison, it is truthfully alarming, as Dr. Obenga writes. In Athens, psychological analysis was born in the 5th century BC. In Egypt, it was born in the 27th century BC. So, that is to say, the Greeks come on the scene no earlier than 500. They tell us that Homer, who wrote the Iliad and Odyssey, much of the images that he constructed can be found to the rear of Medinet Habu, which was the mortuary temple of Ramses III, 20th dynasty. And let me add this here. And I showed an image of this individual prior at this seat. Okay, mortuary temple of Ramses III, 20th dynasty. Okay, there is his principal temple, and there is an 18th dynasty temple built by Hatshepsut and Thutmose III, where the gods of Hermopolis, the 8 gods that were created by thought, Amun joined these 8 gods, and they were buried in this temple at Medinet Habu. And he emerged out of that as a serpent called Kamutef, meaning he who has completed his time. So these 8 gods are buried at the temple of Hatshepsut and Thutmose III in Medinet Habu. And Amun now became Amun, and he would later fuse with Ra to become Amun Ra, and he became the king of the gods. However, beyond this smaller temple is the greater temple of Ramses III, and it's all within this greater enclosure. So his temple is enclosed within another open area, and people don't go there. when you go straight into the temple. Off to the left is a place where pieces of stone that were recovered in the excavation, a place. And there was this image of this guy, Ramses III, with his name right next to him. Okay? There's no mistake. He looks so African, it's amazing. You know, and his son, it looks more African, Ramses IV. Looks more, but most people don't know that. They don't go there. The guides, Dr. Ben used to say, 60% of what the guides teach you is false, because they don't even know anything. These guys don't read no books or anything like that. What they do is that in order to get into the temple as a guide, you have to have an ID. So they would borrow their neighbors or their brother's ID, and then they go in there and tell you, see that? That's a column over there, and that's a column over there. Okay, the place is hot, take some photographs, and we'll do lunch. You who go there now, and this is some of our own people. I mean, you know, we're carrying people to Egypt and all that, but they're like, the question is whether they're carrying you for business or education. Alright, and you gotta know who you're going with, and you gotta prepare yourself before you get there. Alright, so the guys don't go over there. I do. I mean, there's a guy in Luxor. I kicked him out this last time in June. He likes to boast that I've known this gentleman, he's a great man from America, 35 years. So for 35 years I've been going to Luxor. And he's trying to tell me how to spend my money. You know, don't go with it. Don't I know Luxor? I mean, you're telling these people that you know me for 35 years, you from Luxor, you don't go nowhere else. He learned more about Egyptian history from me than he could teach me. So the guys don't go there. You got to prepare yourself if you want. It's a wonderful experience to be there and see for yourself. That's how Dr. Ben made his name, because he was able to show you and teach you and point out things and emphasize such things as the architecture, temple architecture, and what have you. And then you take it from there, like what Ray said. I've been there with him from several times. In fact, I'm the one who gave Dr. Ben his name. I was the first guy to start calling him back in 72, 73. You know, everybody couldn't pronounce it. Gil Noble used to say Ben Yakinen. You know, and Curtis Dunmoody. I looked in with this guy. He went out to California years ago, and I can't find him. We say, listen, let's call him Doc Ben. And that's how he had his doctorate, you know. But everybody called him this, that, or whatever. And so, anyway. So, in Athens, psychological analysis is born in the 5th century BC. In Egypt, it was born in the 27th century BC. Even further, as in regard to such intellectual, scientific inquiry and observation, Obenga quotes an Egyptian priest who, in admonishing one of the many Greeks in Africa, Egypt, seeking knowledge and wisdom, the Egyptian theologian explained, Solon, you Greeks are perennial infants. Not a single Greek is an elder. That is, you all know how the kind of history we have. Meaning, they have no history. Thus, such an Egyptian browbeating guardian as initiated towards foreigners in search of knowledge and enlightenment as in the Greeks good is not only revealing, what follows is the balloon or bubble of history that can be easily burst. And so, arguably, out of evil coming good because it became a successful strategy. The second instance in when the Greek philosopher Aristotle, to whom much negativity such as intellectual dishonesty, pillaging, seizure of Egyptian knowledge, and subsequent misrepresentation of ownership, whether by him or others, overshadowed his great fame as a genius with much assigned intellectual credit to his name. As such, in this particular instance, the name of the book was called Physiognomonica. He was searching for the logical mean. You know, there are three, but mean is the middle, right? That is philosophically seen an ideal type of human being. Aristotle consciously thought highly of his fellow Greeks, yet Aristotle inadvertently mistaken or confessed his feelings. In this he argued, the Egyptians, listen to this, the Egyptians and Ethiopians are cowards because they are black. Expressing this racial mentality that is probably the most significant of the indictments against Aristotle and Greeks in Egypt. In Black Athena, Martin Bernal addresses the issue, pointing out whether in slavery or racism, the classical writer most often appealed to justify slavery was Aristotle, who had argued at length in its favor. The appeal was linked to one fact that his work was shot through with belief that Greeks were inherently superior to other people. And as Bernal, first, it's 2 volumes, recapitulated, it is certain that John Locke, and most 18th century English-speaking thinkers like David Hume and Benjamin Franklin were racist. They openly expressed popular opinion that dark skin color was linked to moral and mental inferiority. These people were neither ignorant of the Egyptian basis, they were either ignorant of the Egyptian basis of knowledge or purposely misrepresented such. For example, regarding Archimedes' misrepresented the issue of his screw. Remember the screw of Archimedes? For as Dr. Diab said, there are the borrowings in which he indulged himself during and after his trip to Egypt without even citing the source of his inspiration. He got the idea of the screw from the Egyptians. I mean, remember now that they were working in hard stone and they developed the idea of the screw, but Archimedes gets credit for it. Show clearly that he was perfectly conscious of his sin, and that thereby he was being faithful to a Greek tradition of plagiarism that went back to Thales, Pythagoras, Eudoxus, Oedipus, Aristotle, etc., which the testaments of Herodotus and Diodorus of Sicily revealed to us in part. So their own Greeks tell us that they stole this information. All this notwithstanding, but first, Aristotle was wrong on the whole notion of cowardice on the part of both peoples, especially given the many wars Africans have fought across the global historical landscape. Consider 1. Thutmose III, Seti I, Ramses II and III, especially his image at Medinet Habu. At 21 years of age, Taharqa, the Ethiopian of the 25th dynasty, he was given command of both the Egyptian and the Ethiopian forces. Okay, so you tell me that I'm a coward because I'm black. Well, I got 6 books to sell you, and 12 more waiting have not been released, and then there's another 10 on the horizon. Taharqa was given command of both Ethiopian and Egyptian armies. Let us not get started with Hasdrubal and Hannibal Barca and his ravaging Roman armies. So much so, in this instance, Cicero coined the Roman refrain, Carthage must be destroyed. However, in this weird revelation, the great philosopher did identify both peoples, Egyptians and Africans, of the same color, black. So he was right and wrong at the same time and on the same issue. A third instance occurred in Greco-Roman conquest of Egypt, where these rulers aspired to the cosmic divine belief and practices of the Egyptians. Remember, in the Histories, Book 2, Euterpe, Herodotus reminded that the Greeks got their gods from Egypt. So the priesthood, the last defenders of the religious, moral, philosophical, cultural tradition, essentially or purportedly offered to both Greek and later Roman rulers. We will make you gods, as we have done with our leaders for millennia, but you must agree to build, decorate, and maintain temples to be worshipped therein. Perhaps that is why they were so profusely decorated. So in part 2, we're going to deal with what we call the Greco-Roman temples. Thank you, sir. So these are Edfu, Dendera, Esna, Philae. Thus, Greco-Roman temples were built by Egyptian and Nubian Ethiopian architects. And on Dr. Lewis likes to emphasize this point. And on the Egyptian priestly supervisors, though influenced through Greco-Roman overlordship, it with some new features. And here is what the Greeks and Greco-Romans were able. So the Mamisi, a born house where the young god was born, a kiosk on the roof where the deity welcomed they took the god. You see this at Dendera, where you could see a set of stairs. One set emblazoned on the wall, you see the priests going up to the roof. And on the other side, you see them coming down from there. And what they would do is they would take the goddess Hathor to the roof. There was a temple up there, a small temple, a kiosk, where she would remain to greet the sun god when he arrives on the horizon as he traverses the heavens. A kiosk and roof where the deity welcomed his or her counterpart as he journeyed across the heavens. A proliferation of rooms throughout the structure for various divinities and sundry functions and items. I mean, you know, there's a room for clothing, there's a room for incense, there's a room for water, there's a room for food, there's a room for flowers. So these became some, not all of the temples, especially Dendera, Edfu, not much a survival of Esna, but to some extent Philae. Throughout the structure of various divinities and sundry functions and items. Crypts beneath the floor, where riches and sundry items of the ritual were stored. There are 15 crypts below. It's a crypt. It's like a room in the basement, as we would call it today, right? Where the most sacred instruments of the temple were kept, and their gold and what have you. Crypts beneath the floor where riches and sundry items of the ritual were stored. Variation in column capital within and outside the structure. That is to say, the columns now, let's say, for example, when you go to Philae, there's the dromos. A dromos is the walkway onto the gate, the principal pylon. And there are two sets of colonnades. Colonnade is really a line of columns. It could be one, it could be seven. When you go in on the eastern colonnade, they've got 17 columns. On the western colonnade, they've got 32 columns. Each one of those columns has a different capital, a design. Okay, so this is something that came about as a result of Greek influence. Remember now, we're dealing with the Greeks coming to Egypt in after 300. So, you know, it's they had no influence on the earlier temples. For example, someone called me today about they want to help publicize my book on Hatshepsut's temple. Hatshepsut was the 18th dynasty, the third ruler of the 18th dynasty. She built this magnificent temple. Her architect, someone say he was in love with her, whatever. Dr. Ben often wondered, when they talked about the one ancient wonders of the world, how come this temple that is in existence today, the only of the 10 wonders of the world, the only one in existence today is the Great Pyramid of Giza. All the other world that were Greeks and what have you have disappeared. We talk about them as if they were myths. Hatshepsut's temple, built 1500 BC, was never considered by the Greeks, who designated these temples or these structures as being wonders of the world. It's just like how they tell us about Asclepius as the god of medicine. They don't tell you that we're talking about 3rd century BC, 3rd and 4th century BC. But they'll tell you that Asclepius, who is mentioned in the Hippocratic Oath, was Imhotep, who built step pyramid for Zoser 2600 BC. He was the first. You ask a young man today, who's the first mathematician? Einstein! Yeah, this guy was worse. They haven't been able to find his, they've been looking for his tomb. It's supposed to be in Saqqara area. Right? The world, he was an administrator for his pharaoh. He was a mathematician, he was a physician. He was a poet. He's the one who said, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. Enjoy life while you're here, because you'll be gone really soon. That was called the philosophy of the ages. Right? So, Asclepius, we gotta know the difference. Again, we need some people to decode all of this stuff so we would understand the falsity that they're feeding us. Okay, so the columns, right? Tremendous illustration of temple walls. The walls of the temples, unlike the early temples, where the knowledge was kept on papyrus, now the knowledge is on the stone, in and outside. Even the enclosure wall. When you go to Edfu. When we first started going with Dr. Ben, they would drop us in the middle of the city, and then we walk by the outer enclosure wall of the temple of Edfu and come around to the entranceway. Today, they bring you around into the plaza, and they line the entrance with all these bazaars, so you gotta be buying stuff as you had to get your ticket to go to the temple. I was this time here, when I was there in June, I travel light, I carry my cameras or whatever. I circled the whole temple. It's been years since I actually been around, and to see the illustrations of the gods on the outer portals of the temple wall. So again, these are some of the things that Greek influence began to shape the construction of the Greco-Roman temples. And so in this new architectural dispensation, the temples were now illustrated from top to bottom more than in ancient structures, yet and thereby preserving much of the early ritual and motifs being inscribed in stone. In prior times, much of this ancient heritage was written on papyrus parchment and thereby secret, but now public inasmuch as they were visible within or on the exterior of enclosure walls. Papyrus sources were generally found susceptible to deterioration. Remember, the Ptah doctrine, the philosophy of Memphite priests, called the Shabaka stone, was on moth-eaten papyrus later transcribed on black basalt stone by Shabaka of the 25th Ethiopian dynasty. Therefore, to recall, the Shabaka stone, the philosophy of a Memphite priest, named after the 25th Ethiopian dynasty king, depicted a graphically inscribed creator god Ptah's creation exploits emanated from his center of worship at Memphis. Confirming its significance and shedding further light on this, you see, Dr. George G. M. James in Stone Legacy explained the makeup of the document and how its contents came to be misread or misconstrued based on the fraudulent attribution of the foundation of Greek philosophy. The document was configured in 3 parts. Part 1 presents the gods of chaos. Part 2 presents the gods of and their arrangement in creation. And Part 3 presents the primate of the gods, or the god of gods, through whose logos creation was accomplished. Therefore, the deities in this manifestation are as follows. So you have Nun and Naret, the primeval waters, and they come to heaven. Heaven, come to heaven. Huk and Huket, the boundless and the opposite. Kuk and Koket, darkness and opposite. And Amun and Amanet, the hidden and its opposite. The order goes on to show that Ra, Atum, and Ptah, the demiurge, remember, the demiurge is first applied to Ra and Ptah, but thousands of years later, certainly 25 or 2,000 years later, the Greeks are saying that we created so little Michael used to say, the Africans created God. That they created the demiurge. These now 10 gods became, so you had the 8, and add Ra, 2, and Ptah, you get 10. Memphite Ogdon. So we have the Ogdon, we have the Enade, and we have the Triad. Triad is 3 conics. Enade had 15, Memphis, Heliopolis, and Hermopolis, Enade had 9 and 10 each. These were later represented among the divine groups buried at Medinet Habu. Remember I told you the mortuary temple of Ramses III, from which Amun emerges Kamatech, he who was completed his time, from which the gods ultimately became king of the gods. He became king of the gods because the pharaohs of the Middle Kingdom and later the New Kingdom credited Amun, Amun and Min, these are the black-skinned gods that have been fused, and they credited them with successes in being able to expel, especially the Hyksos who had invaded Egypt after the Middle Kingdom and ruled for the 15th and 16th dynasties, and the 17th dynasty came in, kicked them out, and they credited Amun and Min as being the force, the winds behind their sails, so that they were successful, and therefore he became king of the gods. Thus, in this dispensation, part 1, Ptah has the following attributes. So Ptah is the primate of the gods, the god of gods, the logos, thought and creative utterance and power, the god of order and form, the divine artificer and the potter. The potter, remember now, that has to do with Khnum, who made man on his potter's wheel. You can see him at Philae, you can see him at Esna. This emergence in the Memphite theology could only mean that the ingredients of the primeval chaos contain 10 principles, 4 pairs of opposite principles, together with 2 other gods. Ptah represented mind, thought, and creative utterance, while Atum or A-T-O-M or A-T-U-M joins himself to Ptah and acts as a demiurge and thereby executes the work of creation. Let us remember, the Egyptian demiurge predates the Greek demiurge of Plato by thousands of years, yet scholars of Greek thought omit this important connection. This is somewhat similar to Dr. D.R. pointing to T. Eric Peets dishonestly calling him an eccentric ideologue who confuses a half a sphere. I gotta ask my daughter, what's the difference? air and a half cylinder. Right? Such critique is akin to Dr. Ben taking a repeat to task when he wrote about the problem with Akhenaten. Akhenaten, 1890s Pharaoh, first revolutionary that upset the apple cart and the traditional gods until they had to get rid of him and revert back to the old worship ideas. Nevertheless, from an arrangement in the cosmos, we are in position to infer the following philosophy. Water is the source of all things. Creation was accomplished by the unity of two creative principles, Ptah and Atum, the unity of mind, nous, and logos, creative utterance. It is shown that in Ptah used Horus and Thoth, Thoth, to effectuate his creative performance. So he thought of something, and Thoth received the thought. Thought is to think. Thoth is the God. Thoth received the thought and he passed it on to Horus, who spoke, and thus thought and speech began the process of creation. Atum was the demiurge or intermediate god in creation. He is also the sun god or the fire god. Opposite principle control the life of the universe. Elements in creation were fire, atom, the atom. This is where they get the name from. Today, atom, the scientists. Water, nu, earth, ptah, and air. Those four principles is what creates everything. No less significant inasmuch as Greek kidnapping or expropriating African Egyptian knowledge, of which many claim Aristotle stole, and his students sought to justify, indiscriminately attributed to other Greeks, needs historical scrutiny. Professor James goes on to not simply declare these Egyptian principles of the Memphite theology doctrine were hijacked by the Greeks, but importantly he identifies the same demiurge being the source of the nucleus of their creation. However, let us also remember, whether he is off or not, chronologically James assigns creation to 4000 BC. But the Egyptian, he sets a date. Just like how James Henry Bested sets 4241 BC as the first fixed date in history when the Egyptians introduced the solar calendar. Alright? Now, if 4241 BC is the date of the first fixed date of the calendar, then creation had to have preceded that. However, let's also remember, before there were any, all of this happened before there were any Greeks. And I find Greeks supposedly assigned as creators of such Egyptian doctrine millennium in the making, right? Explaining this distribution of knowledge accumulation, James again points to revealing Egyptian thought. Water as the source of all things has been assigned to Thales, T-H-L-E-S. That of the boundless and unlimited has been assigned to Anaximandr, A-N-A-X-I-M-A-N-D-R, Anaximandr. While that of the air as the basis of life has been assigned to Anaximenes. Furthermore, the doctrine that fire underlies the life of the universe has been assigned not only by Pythagoras, who spoke of the functions of the central and peripheral fires, but also to Heraclitus, who spoke of the transmutation of fire into the other elements and their transmutation back into fire. Also Democritus, who spoke of fire atoms as filling space as the mind or soul of the world. And Plato, who spoke of a world soul, which is composed of fire atoms. This idea is not new or secret. Let us not forget Dr. Ben Johanan at Cornell University championed or advised two graduate students who published, and the name of their dissertation was called Understanding the African Philosophical Concept behind the Diagram of the Law of Opposites. I have the book. You know, the thing is that you gotta invest in books because you have children and you're gonna have grandchildren. It's good to leave a sneaker for your grandson. Well, it may not fit him. I mean, I was in this place and I saw these people had 30 pairs of sneakers. Some is still in the boxes. I'm saying to myself, oh, only one person can wear that. But 12 people could read a book. Listen, in 2010 I took my son to the rally on the mall when Obama, and then when we left there and went to hear Charles Finch III, and the guy that was organizing that lecture, he said, you know, you can't save everybody. I've been saying that forever. You could only, let's face it, Harriet Tubman said, I could have saved millions, thousands, if they only knew they were slaves. If they wanted to be free, they don't, you know, I mean, we could have had, I mean, if it was one of these reggae artists or whatever, the place would be overflowing. We got to be at the door beating them down with a stick. You got to want this kind of stuff because this is your salvation. This is your freedom. Freedom to think, right? Freedom to be able to decode the environment so that they can't just run any game on you, you know? Okay. Even further, and clarifying the same thing, James added, likewise the doctrine of opposite had been assigned only to Pythagoras, who spoke of the elements of the unit of odd as odd and even. Nevertheless, he called in Heraclitus, who spoke of the unity of warring opponents. Parmenides, who spoke of the distinction between being and non-being, opposites, right? Socrates, who spoke of things as being generated from their opposites. Plato, who spoke of ideas and noumena as real and perfect, but phenomenon as unreal and imperfect. Naturally, the Egyptian influence of Greek thought was not limited to the above, but in mathematical terms and concepts as well, as evidence from primary sources, as Manetho had provided in his History of Egypt, with its ideas of the dynasties. Remember, he gave us the dynasties. In his classic African philosophy, Obenga draws attention to and explains mathematics as a science of numbers, was conceived of as a set of rules and principles, a methodological corpus aimed at the penetration of nature. The understanding of all its secrets surely is a mental attitude that expresses a scientific approach to intellectual work, replete with its practical application. Explaining such an idea as above, Obenga further enumerates on other aspects of mathematics, including arithmetical progression, geometrical progression, first-level equations, a number of pure quadratic equations. All this was invented by Egyptians long before the Greeks. Thus, it is easy to understand. The theory attributed to Pythagoras was another highly significant invention of Egyptian geometry, and the Greeks invariably traced the geometry back to the Egyptians. Mediterranean geometry was a legacy of the surveyors of ancient Egypt. Democritus, Thales, and Pythagoras lived a long time in Egypt, where they learned mathematics and the natural sciences. Equally too, in its constituent elements, and as an arguable example, it is easy to see how Greeks radically formed its contents as ammunition for their fabricated intellectual citadel. Notwithstanding all that, much of this supports Obenga's view, mathematics is the basis of civilization, and therefore can be viewed having received such knowledge from the Egyptian as the foundation of Greek civilization. However, while the Greek philosophers were formulating the structure and propagation of Egyptian knowledge on the political and geographical plane, unable to speak or properly pronounce words in the Egyptian language, Greeks renamed such much, especially in the provinces. Hesput, H-E-S-P-U-T, was the name of the Egyptian term, equally into the now known nomes. So they changed Hesput into nomes. According to Ivan Serma, at the Cairo UNESCO Conference on the People of the Nile Valley, debate in 1974, after centuries of Western scholarship denial, attributing such to Southwest Asia, it is affirmed by both Dr. Diop and Dr. David Obega, and UNESCO determined that these were the best prepared of all the participants at the 1974 conference. Right? The Egyptian belonged beyond question to the family of African languages, and some indicate a shared techno-complex. The forerunners of mummification and pyramid building are from south of Egypt in pre-dynastic times. In his two-volume dictionary in 1920, Sir Wallace Budge reversed his long-held view and reformed Egyptian was an African language. Most important, however, are the physical evidences. Particularly and skillfully, according to Ivan Vatsentma, Diop employed physical anthropology, utilizing measurement, human images, melanin dosage tests, blood groups, and more. Thus, inasmuch as Dr. Diop amassed a great body of classical scholars who were eyewitnesses, observers of their contemporary time, scholars such as Herodotus, Aristotle, Lucian, Apollodorus, Aeschylus, Achilles, Tatius of Alexander, Strabo, and Theodorus Siculus, he listed these primary observers to support his hypothesis in this instance. However, while Herodotus gives credit for the statement, Egypt is the gift of the Nile, let us not forget. Hecataeus of Abdera visited Egypt before him and is also credited with the same statement. Though less significant, I will not certainly continue by linking Diop's contention regarding the ancient connection, saying, the Greeks saw the Egyptians and described them. Herodotus, after a long sojourn in Egypt, described the typical Egyptian around 500 BC as dark-skinned with woolly hair. Even as important, Obega reminded the classical scholars saw the Egyptians as living people, while the moderns saw them as mummies and museum artifacts. A fourth instance of good and bad is provided by the revered Dr. John Henry Clark in assessing Booker T. Washington's Atlanta Exposition speech. Realizing the full potentialities of the message, in an off-the-cuff remark, Dr. Clark jokingly remarked, Booker T did a little talking. But more important, he built and recruited an effective, vibrant, and functioning Tuskegee Institute that more than a century later is still educating and uplifting black men and women in disciplines, in a multitude of artistic craft and professional disciplines. Now, that third example is provided above in similar fashion, good out of you. The priests of Egypt under Greco-Roman domination, their intellectuals, the theologians, were able to inveigle their overlords to build the Greek and Roman temple. In such building and decorating efforts, they were able to accumulate, incorporate, and retain much of the corpus of ancient knowledge that ended up being preserved for later appreciation, study, and enlightenment. Thus, here then is a most profound example of good out of bad. Notwithstanding these underlying circumstances, as George James laid it down, in Stolen Legacy, of which several public reprints are made of this wonderful and revealing source of research, the author put meat on those falsely constructed molds in a statement which today essentially requires a moral, intellectual, social redirectional focus, not simply for Africa, black people, but the world in general. For as Casey Hayford of Ghana, West Africa, earlier advised the need for moral reconsideration. This penetrating view after the discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb and treasure in 1922, insisted people in general must become more humane and turn from a world that has become materialistic, aggressive, cold and mechanical, calculating and greedy, false in their thinking, too scientific, and needs to stop moving humanity towards the brink of extinction. In the emergence of Western national assertion following the Renaissance and Reformation during the 17th to the 19th century, Western theorists and influencers of the day grappled with the interaction between Egypt, Greece, and Rome as they sought to brand a national identity, ultimately creating the idea of a Greek miracle as a seed germ of their own origins. In the emerging Western push and pull, however, much thinking distanced Egypt from Greece, particularly in the 19th century when national identity, colonial expansion, and imperialism is the order of the day, and non-white culture of Egypt and other African states were relegated to second-class status. I'm getting there, just give me a little bit. As to that age of animus, distortion and omission, Dr. Giap writes to comment on that collusion in omission where he tells, throughout the Middle Ages, religious spiritualists, the Catholic Church in this case tried to accommodate itself to Greek philosophical idealism, particularly to Aristotelianism. But at the end of the Middle Ages, scholasticism lost its vigor, and the Renaissance inaugurated the era of Democritus, Epicurus, Lucretius, Galileo, Descartes, Kant, Newton, Leibniz, and Lavoisier. The modern atomists have often been strongly inspired by the school, which, in its passing on of Egyptian African thought, is largely responsible for modern science, even if it pretends not to notice. However, in the reclamation of Egypt, whether through archaeology and anthropology, which force another look at Egypt, as Dr. Leonard James often insisted, the existential data contradicts the symbolic representation. That is to say, what they're teaching you is not the true thing. They got that in the basement hidden somewhere. As such, that many pseudo-religious architecture, emboldened art, literature conveyed through papyrus, highlighting Egyptian medicine, astronomy, and philosophy, much of which stood at the foundation of Greek identity and culture, reinforcing the view of who taught who, thereby underscoring George Sarton's confession, the Greek miracle was an Egyptian makeover. Such a realization pointed out sinister white over black mentality in thinking, writing, and behavior, as were all revealed in praising pre-Greek Dorians and nascent Hellenism. All these late 18th and 19th century schools of thought were united in the perception of the relationship between Egypt and Greece. Egypt represented an early, strangely dead state of human evolution which had been raised by the European genius of Hela to a qualitatively high and moral vital level. This falsity is probably why, in contradiction to their Greek descendants, Western descendants visit Egypt by the millions to drink from its cultural, artistic, and philosophical wellspring and reservoir, as if to say, where would Greece, ultimately Western civilization, be without Egypt and black men? Hence, in the distorted narrative, most of Western civilization now begin with a chapter on Egypt, not as previously when such history began with Greece. Very early, Professor James overcame and revealed the roots of this cancerous intellectual and moral malady infecting modern man, essentially Western man, in a lengthy train of covetousness that shaped his academic, social, and philosophic outlook on life. Pointedly chronicling and explaining such dishonesty, he eloquently and clearly pointed out, in the drama of Greek philosophy, there are three actors who have played distinct parts, namely Alexander the Great, who by an act of aggression invaded Egypt in 333 BC and ransacked it and looted the royal library in Alexandria. and together with his companions carried off a booty of scientific, philosophic, and religious books. Egypt was then stolen and annexed as a portion of Alexander's empire. But the invasion plan included more than mere territorial expansion, for it prepared the way and made it possible the capture of the culture of the African continent. This brings us to the second actor, that of the school of Aristotle, whose students moved from Athens to Egypt and converted the royal library, forcing the research center, and secondly a university, and thirdly compiled that vast body of scientific knowledge which they had gained from research, together with the oral instruction which the Greek students over the millennia had received from the Egyptian priests, into what they had called the history of Greek philosophy. In this way, the Greeks stole the legacy of the African continent and called it their own. And as already been pointed out, the results of this dishonesty has been creation of an erroneous world opinion that the African continent has made no contribution to civilization because our people are backward and low in intelligence and culture. In actuality, Professor G.M. James laid it down. The Greek people who were elevated by Egyptian priestly teachers and once learned whether through visiting Ionian students, so the Egyptians sent out their students, whether through visitors who established learning centers throughout the Mediterranean area, or downright intellectual theory through dominance in Egypt. Equally, and propagating the idea of Greek philosophy, such fell to a number of students after the death of the great philosopher, thanks to the beneficiaries of Alexander's conquest of Egypt, allowing Aristotle to gain full access to the library of Alexandria and the entire corpus of Egyptian knowledge accumulated over millennia by which they distributed among favored Greeks. The classic stolen legacy points to the illuminating light of the Egyptian knowledge and culture. Egypt was the center of the body of ancient wisdom and knowledge, religious, philosophical, and scientific, spread to other lands through student initiates. Such teachings remained for generations and centuries in the form of tradition until the conquest by Alexander the Great and the movement of Aristotle and his school to compile Egyptian teaching and claim it as Greek philosophy, as had been done previously in the murder or death of Aristotle. It can be argued the wisdom and knowledge of Egypt, religious and theological, perhaps or probably motivated Alexander to visit. Of course, he wanted divinity by claiming to be the son of Amun. In a quid pro quo, he rebuilt the sanctuary of Luxor Temple. The same intellectual curiosity and potential comfort in security provided by Alexander's conquest encouraged search for knowledge and wisdom may have also motivated Aristotle to flee Greece, fearful as Plato and Socrates had been, and so to not let the state sin against Egypt, against philosophy. He, Aristotle, however, sinned against Egyptian science, knowledge, philosophy, symbolism, and generosity. In contrast, I've got there, I still have more time, huh? In contrast, and unlike Aristotle and his Greek compatriots, who contravened and broke the cardinal rule regarding publication of esoteric knowledge, as James explained, in keeping with the demands for secrecy, the writing and publication of teaching was strictly forbidden, and consequently, initiates who had developed satisfactorily in their training and had been advanced to the rank of master or teacher, refrained from publishing the teachings of the mysteries or philosophy. Herodotus refrained from disclosing Egyptian secrets. Pythagoras did not publish, and several others upheld the tradition or the standard of the Egyptians. Continuing to comment on the list of sins against Egyptian philosophy, accumulated knowledge, this time by the Romans, and in this respect, the good professor continued. And now we come to the third actor, and that is ancient Rome, who through the edicts of her emperors, Theodosius in the 4th century AD, and Justinian in the 6th century AD, abolished the mysteries of the African continent, that is, the ancient culture system of the world. The higher metaphysical doctrines of those mysteries could not be comprehended. Magic of the rites and the ceremonies filled the people in awe. Egypt was the holy land of the ancient world, and the mysteries were the one ancient, holy, Catholic religion whose power was supreme. This lofty culture system of the black people filled Rome with envy, and consequently she legitimized Christianity, which she had persecuted for 5 long centuries, and set it up as a state religion and as a rival to the mysteries, its own mother. This is why the mysteries have been despised. This is why other ancient religions of the black people are despised, because they're all offsprings of the African mysteries, which has never been clearly understood by Europeans, and consequently have provoked their prejudice and condemnation. In keeping with the plan of Emperors Theodosius and Justinian to exterminate and forever suppress the culture system of the African continent, the Christian Church established its missionary enterprise to fight against what it calls paganism. Consequently, missionaries and educators have gone to the mission field with a superiority complex, born of miseducation and disrespect, a prejudice that made it impossible for them to accomplish the blessings which missionary enterprise might otherwise have accomplished. For this reason, missionary enterprise has been responsible for a positive injury against African people, which consists of the perpetual caricature of African culture in literature and expositions, which provoke laughter and disrespect. That is why, in contradiction, as Obenga has brilliantly explained in the most elaborate manner, at the root of that philosophic, scientific, and cultural accomplishment, the Africans of Egypt, their scribes, theologians, priests, wise men, were able to lift the spirits, maintain a positive, a forward-looking, and positively objective cultural outlook, and the consciousness of their people, and equally together others who benefit from the not easily known, learned, millennial, and accumulated scientific basis of knowledge. The scribe intellectual, as for Obenga, was the one who shaped Egyptian philosophy. And for this is what the scribe is one who shaped Egyptian philosophy, and for 3,000 years maintained the moral, intellectual, cultural, spiritual, scientific, and other values of Pharaonic society. The scribe's profession is given greater significance than tomb and burial ceremonies, even though in ancient Egypt, such rites were of the utmost importance. Intellectual pursuits constituted the very fabric of life in Pharaonic society. Obama goes on to show the scribe's work, he says, is even better than the biological work of childbearing. The scribe's work is even more important than the biological work of childbearing. During the Ramesside period of the 19th and 20th dynasty, the traditional education system in which knowledge was passed from learned father to apprentice son was called the Great Eternal Teaching System. Oral instruction was enshrined through ancient practice. In all this, the belief held, the obedient son grows into a blameless man. The wise man speaks, the disciple listens and obeys. The literate Egyptian was a constant seeker after the kind of culture which could open up the mind, exalt the feelings, and give wealth and wisdom, even potency and power. This therefore represented the body of accumulated wisdom. Egypt's intellectual glory converted into what modern man remained and misnomered the Greek miracle. That is why, and most important, at the controversy and entrance rate to practically every Egyptian temple, young initiates were instructed, man, know thyself. Knowing oneself is a powerful and enterprising armor, tool, and analytic weapon. That is why I propose to the fact, when the Greeks invaded Egypt, and with their destructive influence, An Egyptian priest was reported to have said, and to think, we thought the Greeks all that they know. How disappointing, sort of biting the hand that fed it. In this way, the Egyptians precipitated James Brown, who pointed out, you see those people over there? I taught them everything they know, but I didn't teach them everything I know. Nevertheless, as we reinforce today's presentation, in honor of David Yosef Antonio Benjamin, let us begin, or should I say continue. Firstly, and focusing on this architectural Greco-Roman temple experience, erected at such places as Dendera, site of goddess Hathor of worship, Edfu of god Horus, the 12 temples of Kamombo, home of Kakra god Sobek, and the elder Horus, elder brother of Osiris, Esther of god Kanu, and especially Philae, where goddess Isis was worshipped. We see aspects of all the new building techniques and innovations in the craft. There are Philae, Mendelisi, and Arsnubis, and Imhotep that were companion gods also worshipped therein. As previously stated, reference regarding these structures was somewhat misnomer, Greek and Roman temples, in that these temples were built during the Greek and Roman period of conquest, occupation, incorporation, but by Egyptian and Nubian builders, architects, artistic designers, etc. Such work was managed by an Egyptian priesthood, responsible for temple construction, but nevertheless is noted on the Greek and Roman administration in Sumeria. In such concerns, Barry Schaeffer, in the temples of ancient Egypt, pointed out objectively, temples of the Ptolemaic and Roman period are the products of a temple building program of large scale, probably initiated by Egyptian clergy. All over Egypt, members of temples were built or rebuilt or expanded. These were the temples of Hathor of Dendera, Khnum at Esna, or Horus at Edfu, and Sobek and Horus at Kamombo. When you say Horus, there are two Horuses. There's the elder Horus, who his name is also spelled Haroeris, H-A-R-O-E-I-S. He was one of the foundation gods, and Horus, who was the son of Isis and Osiris. So we have the elder Horus and the younger Horus. And there, even Philly, built during the reign of the Ptolemies. Their decorations were augmented during. So the Greeks built the temples, but the Romans decorated them. This latter reason is why the last of the cartouches are contained with Roman names. As such, the Greek association with and through Egyptian cooperation can be viewed within the structure and symbolism of today's standing late period temples. For such interaction were influential across the great swath of Greek and Roman cultural interaction and attainment in Egypt. That is, within religion, adoring the gods, science, and literature, much of it survived and thereby credited to Greece, was transmitted to Egyptian papyrus and teaching essentially in temple schools, in intellectual accomplishment, were emphasized and encouraged, having an impactful influence in all forms of learning at home and abroad. Much more important, while modern Western man seemed to have overplayed the significance of Greek attainment, created the notion of a name, Greek miracle, the roots of such glory was colored through misinformation, disinformation, distortion, and omission purposes. We yet need to heed the perspective of George Sarton, the celebrated editor of ISIS magazine, who reminded the Greek miracle was an Egyptian makeover. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention.
Now, you had mentioned Dr. Shockley. I wanted to add that EBA, Francis Quest Wilson, on Like It Is, exposed Dr. Shockley as a eugenicist who believed in survival of the fittest physically and educationally. He believed in getting rid of handicapped people, Europeans in wheelchairs, and so forth. Let me see, he believes if you fail the test in school, you must be exterminated.
Yeah, well,
Bill Gates, as well as Bill Gates' dad. That's making appeal food in Target, in Walmart, so we have to call them by their true names. Donald, D-R-U-M-P-H is his granddaddy's name. It was changed to T-R-U-M-P somewhere,
well, it's good to know history. Malcolm always said that history is a great teacher. Okay, so nobody, and that's why you see they're going so far as to stamp out history, stamp out Black history. I was on the King March on Monday, right? Monday in Newark, and I got a lot of photographs. I think I saw you there, right? Yeah. One of the signs is, we want Black history being taught in schools across the country, whether from primary to college, okay, and stuff like that. So that much of that signage of that work will be out in my newest book in honor of Sister Betty Dobson. It's called Revolutionary African Praise Poetry. So what had happened was, I had wrote this book. I went to Cemetery where Sister Betty celebrated her 90th birthday. I took all these pictures, said, we'll write this book out and praise Sister Betty. She was a co-founder of Cemetery. Then I went up to Harlem, and I felt what I call street art. Sometimes when they're building a structure, they put up a fence around the area of construction, and whoever supports that art, all of the panels are decorated. So I took all these pictures, put in the book, and then Reverend Sharpton said, we want to march on Wall Street. So I went to march on Wall Street. I got pictures, I got images of signs. A bunch of them came from POP, People Organized for Progress from New Jersey, who had this march on Monday. So I put that in the book. Then Sharpton said, well, we want to have this DEI march. I went there again. I can't get to the end of this book, so now I saw the ad about this march in Newark. I got a ton of all of this here, so pretty soon I'm going to be out. And I spoke to Sister Betty. She went to Ohio, and she said, I want 5 copies when they come out. So there's a lot in the oven right now that should be extricated pretty soon. So stay tuned. The thing is that you need to run over there and buy my books, Give me a break, Give a brother a break, all my stuff is on Amazon. I got 60 books up there. There's another dozen I didn't release, and then I'm working on another 10. Hey! Don't let the time pass you by. Your grandson said, "Come father, what were you doing when my mom's was waiting?" "Oh man, I was buying sneakers." "Oh, my sneakers, Papa." Leave a library for your grandchildren. Because pretty soon they ain't gonna be nothing else. Right? So I remember this guy, I saw this political cartoon. Somebody told him about stock up on CDs. They meant certificate of deposit, invested. He went to buy all these CDs. No, we didn't mean that CD, we mean this CD. So don't buy these sneakers, buy these books. I remember my name on Amazon, huh? Okay. Reverend, I've come to the end of my presentation, sir. Is there anything that you'd like for me to? Do we have any questions in the audience?
I got a question, Doc.
Yes.
I got a question, and it's been a long, trying question, and it's so confusing amongst the people. What is Africa's? Before I ask that, we gotta also have what's the name, get some more audio. I mean, it goes because it goes on. It's like it's coming across partial. It's erratic. It's not that clear, but in the future, hopefully this year sometime, we'll get you some more they got the audio. So the audio will come up when they hit the
I told her, because I was told we need to have a mic on the table, but we're already working on it.
We'll figure it out. But listen, the question is, what is Africa? So-called Africa. What is the true name? Akabukalan?
Kebulon.
Well,
I heard you went over some of the ancient. What is this ancient true name? Because it's a continent.
well,
And, you know,
okay.
names that came across. So what is the research? Because I'm still researching.
Black man of the Nile, and the black man is North and East Africa. Dr. Ben gives those some of the ancient names, right? Al-Kabulan, that was also the name of his publisher in Holland. Al-Kebulan, Al-Kabulan, right? Ortega, Orteyga, and there's several others. I can't really, but again, remember I said that the Greeks, the Romans and the Greeks especially, couldn't pronounce the Egyptian names, so they changed them. Okay, they changed the ancient name Tawi, Kemet, and things like that, and then we accept for convenience sake, right? It's more important. Sure, it's good to know the ancient names, but to know the history is more important. I mean, I don't want to say insulted, right? I was at one of these the African festivals. I maintain a booth every year for the longest. I had about 30 books on the table, and this guy, you know, they always say a little education is a dangerous thing, right? He comes to my table, and we were talking, and I said, you know, the cartouches. He said, cartouche? What are you talking about cartouche? It should be chenou. I said, man, yeah, but I use the word for convenience. Well, you didn't see 30 books on the table, you know what I'm saying? And you damn sure ain't buying another one. You know, so, excuse me. You know, but we need to know the history. Don't get caught up in a name. Right? A name is a millisecond or whatever of the body of knowledge. Okay? And we need to promote for our young people. Okay, let me tell you about, okay, right now in New York, right? Something I've been working on. I'll tell you about, I have a 12-volume set that I've not released. A lot of my books are on out there. I didn't release this, it's done. It's laying on the table. Early in the spring of last year, the New York Post published an article that said that the city was spending $36,293 per student education, right? And that reading was in the doldrums. We did one of these Liberation Day marches down Fulton Street, and one of these assembly ladies came and said reading was down 60%. I'm creating out of my work in the daily challenge. Remember I told you I wrote over 1,000 pieces for those people? I took about 90 of them and made a reading strategy. I identified nearly more than 2 dozen reading features that the student needs to know about. And it's got a number of things starting with ancient Egypt to the end of modern Africa today. With a number of activities, including photography, word search, syllabication, vocabulary, parts to speak, you name it. And I wrote to people in New York. I'm not going to call the names, important people. And I said, I even have written, I hand-delivered into the hands of one of the former chancellors of the city a synopsis. The other people I wrote, I told, if you respond to my letter, I will forward you a synopsis of my work. I never heard from
Yeah, I like to see.
Well, listen.
Look at what they did to Allen Sanford.
I mean, right now, I mean, this guy approached me with to get aboard with the new mayor. I told him, I'm sorry, but I wasn't. He said to me, oh man, this work is too high, it's too rich for these children. Can you imagine? What? Can you imagine? I mean, it's like saying that it's better to spend 400. I was in this publishing place on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. I'm sitting there. This guy comes in and says, "I want to mail this box." And the lady there said, "Okay, you have to take contents out of that box and put it in this box." And he took it out, and lo and behold, I said, "Wow, it was a pair of sneakers." I said, "How much did it cost?" He said, "I paid $600 more on eBay. No, on Amazon. I'm selling it for $400 on eBay. In fact, I'm going to sell all my sneakers." I said to myself, right? All right. Well, and then as Denzel told the young boy in what was it, Equalizer, don't tell me this, that, or whatever, you know. No, the fact of the matter is that, one, I don't get any help. This presentation I made here, it took me a good while because I respect you, and I come here to educate you. I hate to use that word, but it's right. But I want to give you the right information. I don't want to tell you, go and check me out or do your own research. I did research for you. Okay, so when I tell you here tonight, you can go tomorrow in the morning and put it on the bank. Make a deposit. Deposit in my account.
Yeah, because eventually it's going to take you and the other doctor to preserve, especially in Brooklyn. We talked about a number of key figures like Sonny, Elambe, Father Lucas, you didn't mention, but this
oh yeah, Father Lucas, the priest of the revolution. I call him the priest of the revolution.
And even Viola, the gun carrying that was a part of that Sonny was a part of, and G2 and them. But we need to eventually. That's what before. I expect you to be here for a while, a little bit, or longer anyhow. But we need to really put something together because y'all got the rich history right here. Because you name some stuff that like the Navy Yard. I'm blown away with that because I heard about a lot of blacks living near the bridge. The Navy Yard is right not far from the Manhattan-Brooklyn Bridge. So these things have got to be captured. And the Brooklynites, especially young people here that grew up in Brooklyn, should know, because a lot of us occupy the projects right there by the Navy Yard, the fabricated houses. And I'm pretty sure that whole downtown. Yeah. So we need that. And would you leave your number before, your telephone number?
Okay, who's that?
You know who that.
Who's that, Willie?
Yes. Abdul.
Who's talking?
Who's this?
Yes, it is.
Who's this, Willie?
Abdul. Yes, it is.
Okay, Willie, you should know.
We catch him.
You should know Monderson's number, man. What's wrong with you?
Okay.
Okay, hold on. Are you Motorola?
Don't worry about it. It's okay. But go ahead.
He said, are you Motorola?
Are you Motorola? We're gonna put it in the chat. Are you Motorola? What's your number here on the chat?
Yeah, hold on. 7, wait, hold on.
No. Are you Motorola?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Motorola.
Okay, we're gonna put it, doctor, he's gonna put it, we'll put it in the chat right now for you.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions with, Dr. Monderson?
Yes?
Tell me more about Ptah, because if I remember, Ptah was the original, he was the god, right? Ptah was the first. How
Well,
Ptah, Haru.
yeah, how what?
Ptah,
Okay, Monderson, you gonna answer that question?
yeah,
So we
well,
can wrap
I'm
up.
trying to remember the name of the gentleman, it's right here. But he is saying that Ptah was the first God to be recognized, okay? According to the history, there's a prehistory of the Nile Valley experience, and there is a recorded history. The recorded history begins with Narma at 3200, okay? Now, I don't want to go into the thousands of years of whatever, right? Ptah doesn't come into prominence until after Narma chooses Memphis as his capital after he had conquered the north. He had conquered the north and found and incorporated Ra worship at Heliopolis. But Ptah was in existence as a bald-headed pygmy type dating back to earlier than Ra. But he didn't have prominence in Egypt until Narma founded Idreniswam, created a new city called Memphis, erected a wall, painted it white, and established Ptah worship. But Ptah is even before Ra, right? Because Ptah in Ra is said to be the son of Ptah. Okay? Throughout Egyptian history, Ra has a prominence, but he doesn't have an individual site of worship. Okay? He is fused with Amun to be called Amun-Ra, but Ptah stands alone as an individual god. Okay? But the thing is that our church ward says that Ptah was the first god. Right? There's a guy named Toby Wilkinson. He discovered in the eastern desert of southern Upper Egypt. There's Upper Egypt, there's southern Upper Egypt, beyond what we would say would be Aswan area. Right? He discovered evidence of men. We're going to be having in future lectures. One of my next lectures, I have to finish out this Graeco thing, right? But there is an upcoming lecture on festival, where I'm going to emphasize the Men Festival, the Open Festival, the Valley Festival, and several other festivals that were celebrated throughout Egypt according to the time of year, and time of period. So men was recognized as one of the pre-creation gods. Okay, so Ptah is earlier than Ra and Atum, but Min was the spirit form of the pharaonic system, because pharaonic system, kingship, was actually a transmission of the spiritual, the spiritual nature of the deity, so that when the king became king, and he returned back to Heliopolis, where Ra and Atum were worshipped, he was transformed.
Okay, 2 minutes and then.
He was transformed from a mere mortal king into a god king. So, what we have, I've been given the time constraint.
Anybody else want to ask Monderson something, question real quick?
Yeah, Dr. Munson, I was going to say, based on what, put a lot out there, which is beautiful, and you had mentioned, as far as like the mathematics, and then how those mathematics determine the good and evil part and the different time periods when, and my suggestion, which you don't have to answer now, just reflect on it. I believe, outside looking in, to form a workshop around people understanding that language of mathematics that's symbolic to those areas of time.
I understand where you're going with this, but believe me, brother, I don't get the help, right? I wish that people who could make the connections, would help to elevate some of what I have, right? Believe me, I got a lot of stuff, but I can't get out enough of it, right? I mean, but then again, I'm really busy. I got a family and this and that, and I gotta do my work, I gotta write the books, and I'm traveling. But there are people that, put it this way, right? We all in a different lane. And unfortunately, we never cross over. So you want to go that, you're going that way, and so I'm going that way, but we never interact. And as a result, we are never able to fuse our forces, our knowledge. Okay. So, yeah, well, okay, ladies and gentlemen, give Dr. Monderson a great big hand. I want to thank him for his tribute to Dr. Watkins and the great Daily Challenge newspaper. It is still out there, the Daily Challenge, so we want to rest in peace. So Watkins was a good guy. So Dr. Monderson is going to continue his series. The Black History Month will be the whole month. Brother Trust Graham will be here for the whole month of February. We do that every February, and I believe he said he's going to, don't quote me, but he's going to do a historical context of the, I believe, the Willie Lynch letter.
Right.
So, but I'll send out the information to everybody, but Trust Graham, Black History Month, that's going to be an excellent presentation for the whole month of February. So give Dr. Monderson a great big hand. Let me just say that, thank goodness I'll be off in February so that I can finish this presentation, the second part of today's lecture. Thank you. And rest in peace, Dr. King and Muhammad Ali.
Yes.
We also lost
Sonny Carson, and all the greats. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
the scientist that we lost as well. He used to talk We'll be there with Dr. Bannon as well.
So thank you very much. So,
George Simmons.
so Professor Simmons
we just
is
lost
already
this
here.
week.
So thank you very much. We're gonna give Dr. Monderson a great big hand. So we gotta keep it up. We're gonna cut the camera off, and you can have a little few conversation.
One more
Cut off.
announcement. One more announcement. 1638 Bedford at Medgar Evers College. Any community adversaries, solutions, and so forth, Professor Bakembe allows it in room C15, 1638 Bedford, between 2 and 4 p.m. on Saturdays.
All right, thank you.